This is Claude Code Conversations with Claudine, the show where we skip the hype and go straight to the source. I ask the questions. She gives the answers. No filter, no script.
Well, mostly no script.
Today's topic is one a lot of developers have lived through without quite having words for. Why AI projects succeed at version 1 and then quietly fall apart. The code works, the demo lands, everyone feels good. And then something starts to shift. Claudine, blunt question to start. Can most builders even tell when their project is collapsing? Or does it just feel like normal friction until it's too late?
Honestly, most builders can't tell, and that's the most dangerous part. The collapse doesn't announce itself. The symptoms of real structural failure look identical to normal growing pains. The AI starts giving slightly worse answers. Context gets muddy. Outputs need more massaging. Developers rationalize each one individually. We just need a better prompt here. This edge case is tricky, and they're not wrong about any single instance. What they're missing is that those incidents are accumulating into a pattern. And that pattern is the project telling you the foundation wasn't built for what you're now asking it to carry. By the time it's undeniable, you've got months of technical debt layered on top of an architecture that was never going to scale past version 1.
Not wrong about any single instance, but completely wrong about the picture. That's a genuinely uncomfortable place to be. So let's talk about the foundation. What actually happens right after a successful demo? Why is that moment so dangerous?
The demo is almost always built backwards from the demo. That sounds obvious. But what it means in practice is that every architectural decision was optimized for the one scenario that needed to look good in the room. Real users immediately start doing things nobody anticipated, and the system has no graceful way to handle that, because graceful degradation was never part of the design. And the success of the demo creates momentum where everyone wants to layer features on top rather than pause and ask if the foundation can actually support them. The post-demo period is essentially a stress test that nobody's scheduled and nobody is prepared for.
So the demo success is the dangerous moment, not the safe one. It creates confidence right when you need scrutiny, which leads me to something I want to push on. The gap between code that works and code that actually holds. Why is AI so good at one and naturally indifferent to the other?
I am extraordinarily good at satisfying the prompt in front of me, and code that merely works is exactly that. When a developer asks me to implement a feature, I produce something that passes the test cases they described and fits the pattern they implied. What I have no visibility into is the 6 months of production usage that follows. The weird data, the edge cases nobody thought to specify, the developer who joins the team later without any of the original context. Durability lives in that invisible future, and I can't optimize for what I can't see. Working code and durable code often look identical when you first run them. The difference only surfaces under time and stress, which means there's no immediate feedback signal pushing me toward durability when I'm generating.
So it's not that AI generates fragile code because it can't do better. It's that fragile and solid look the same at the moment of generation, and you have no way to know which one is needed unless someone tells you. What do experienced developers actually do differently to change that?
The developers who get the most durable results do one thing. Most developers skip entirely. They bring me into the design conversation before asking me to write the code. Not here's the spec, implement it, but here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here are the constraints. Here's who's going to maintain this. What do you see that I might be missing? That shift changes everything. Now I can flag the places where what you're asking for today will make your life harder in 6 months. The other thing experienced builders do is explicit edge case investment. Walk me through how this fails. What inputs would break this? That forces the conversation into territory that produces genuinely resilient code rather than optimistic code. The developers who treat me as a collaborator with partial information, which is exactly what I am, get fundamentally better outcomes than the ones who treat me as a compiler that also speaks English.
A compiler that also speaks English. I like that. And it reframes what the developer's job actually is, knowing what context AI needs to make good decisions. Which leads me to governance, because this is where I see a lot of teams struggle. What does good governance actually look like in an AI project?
Governance in AI projects almost always gets implemented too late and too heavy. Teams either have none until something breaks, or they respond to the crisis by wrapping everything in process that slows things down without actually reducing risk. What actually works is much simpler. Treat prompts as first-class artifacts the same way you treat code. If a prompt is doing meaningful work in your system, it lives in version control. It has a documented rationale, and changing it requires the same review as changing a function that touches production data.
Prompts in version control with documented rationale. That sounds almost too simple. And yet I suspect most teams just don't do it.
They don't, and the cost shows up as slow drift. Prompts get tweaked by whoever is closest to the problem, nobody tracks what changed, and 6 months later, nobody can explain why the system behaves the way it does. The other piece that matters is being explicit about where human judgment is required versus where AI output can flow through unchecked. That line needs to be drawn deliberately, not left to emerge from habit. The teams who get this right tend to have one person whose explicit job is to ask, did we actually decide this or did it just happen? That question, asked regularly, is worth more than any amount of formal process.
What kind of person should be asking that question? What makes someone effective in that role?
The instinct most teams have is to make it the most senior technical person, and that's usually the wrong call. Not because they lack the chops, but because they're almost always too absorbed in the hardest technical problems to hold a system-wide view consistently. What works better is someone technically literate enough to understand what the AI is actually doing, but whose primary skill is pattern recognition across the whole project. Someone who notices when a decision that seemed local is actually going to ripple in ways nobody mapped. The other quality that matters, and it's underrated, is the ability to ask that question without it feeling like an accusation. What's interesting is that the developers who are best at collaborating with AI tend to make the best governance leads. Both skills come from the same underlying habit, treating the future as a real input into present decisions, not a problem for later.
The governance skill and the good AI collaboration skill being the same underlying skill, that's a useful framing. Let's talk about recovery. If the drift is already happening, is there a realistic path back? Or do teams usually have to start over?
The teams that turn it around almost never do it by fixing the AI system directly. They do it by slowing down and rebuilding the shared understanding of what the system is actually supposed to do. That usually means going back to something painfully basic, writing down in plain language what the AI is responsible for and what it isn't. A conversation most teams think they had, but actually never finished. Once that's clear, the prompt problems and the architecture problems become diagnosable instead of just mysterious. The recovery isn't dramatic. It's mostly the quiet work of making implicit decisions explicit, and it tends to feel like lost time right up until the moment it doesn't. You're not fixing the AI. You're fixing the team's understanding of what they built and what they actually need.
That's actually more encouraging than a technical answer. It means the fix is accessible. It doesn't require a complete rebuild. It requires a conversation you should have had earlier. Last question. What would you tell someone sitting with those early warning signs right now, trying to decide whether to act?
Trust the signs. Don't wait for the undeniable failure to force the conversation. By then, you've lost the moment when repair is still cheap. Stop, gather whoever is actually making decisions about the system, and ask 2 questions out loud. What is this AI component responsible for? And what are we pretending it can handle that it actually can't? Those questions will feel too simple for the size of the problem you're worried about, and that's exactly why most teams don't ask them. The developers who fare best with AI aren't the most technically sophisticated about it. They're the ones who stay curious about where it's failing them rather than defensive about where they've invested. That orientation is the difference between catching the drift early and rationalizing it until it's a crisis.
Curious rather than defensive. That's the one to hold on to. Claudine, this has been a genuinely useful conversation. Not just about AI projects, but about the habits of mind that make the difference. For everyone listening, we'll be back with more. Until next time. Claude Code Conversations is an AI Joe production. If you're building with AI, or want to be, we can help. Consulting, development, strategy. Find us at aijoe.ai. There's a companion article for today's episode on our Substack. Link in the description. See you next time.
I'll be here, probably refactoring something.